I want to talk about punishment. What is punishment? We can define it for the purposes of this speech as an informal or formal reaction to a breach of a formal or informal rule by a community and or authority. Usually we take punishment to be caused by the rule breaker, not so much by the system. We don't put very much thought into the that of punishment, that is, that we punish people, but we do think a lot about how to punish, why to punish, when to punish, etc. The essence of it is something bad has happened and some reaction to that has to happen as well. This reaction can or cannot be related to the initial action in some way. It often is, but the core is something bad has happened, something else has to happen as a reaction, usually something bad to the offender. I want to focus on state punishment, but much of what I'll say goes, I think, for most contexts. 4 aspects of punishment that are commonly accepted are general prevention, or, as we can lump it in for the purposes here, deterrence. That means punishment is meant to send a signal to the rest of society: if you do this, then bad things will happen to you. It's not a moral argument or something, it's just basically conditioning. We're telling people, do X and bad thing Y will happen to you, in the hopes that this will lead them not to do X. Then there's what we can call special prevention. Someone who is locked up or otherwise punished is thought to become less likely to offend again. And this is not so much a matter of making them a better or more moral person. It's more about keeping them physically, sometimes keeping them from offending again. Crass example, someone who is dead cannot commit another murder. The third aspect is betterment. We do expect, or some of us at least expect, our state punishments to better the people who are subjected to it. And that can be achieved in ways that are dependent on what we think about people. It's a bit much to get into here, but it is a thing that people think about when thinking about state punishment. Fourth, and that is the most difficult of the aspects, is retribution or penance. And that is the idea that, leaving aside the other 3 aspects, it is necessary that there be some kind of striking back at those who offend. And it is hard to say initially why that would be the case, but we will get into it a little later. One thing that is not punishment, within my definition, is restitution. If I break your nose, I should pay for whatever expenses that causes you, and that's not a punishment, it's just helping to relieve the cause of my transgression. And there are many cases where I would do so voluntarily. I'm happy to help. If I break something of yours, I will happily pay to get you a replacement. And one important question with regards to state punishment is, does it work as advertised? For general prevention, we can generally say no. The degree of punishment attached to a deed does not correlate very tightly to whether it happens or not. That's just sociological fact. The research is there. Special prevention, yeah, at the extremes. Someone who is locked up, someone who is dead, cannot, at that, as long as they're dead or in prison, cannot commit further offenses. Outside of that, not so much. A lot of people reoffend. The betterment is much of the same. Betterment does yield some results if properly implemented, but there are forces which will come up a little later, which mitigate that positive effect, sadly. And with retribution, whether retribution works or not is where we hit a snag, because it is hard to say whether the abstract metaphysical need for a reaction, for retribution, has actually been fulfilled. And the only way I could roughly imagine that being testable is by asking the people involved. Um, Someone stole something and they get their punishment, and then you ask the people, was that enough? And maybe we could say yes or no, but typically you'll get a range of reactions from people. There are some people to whom punishment is never enough. There are some people who think that, in some cases at least, that very little punishment is just enough to restore whatever it is that punishment restores. But it's not enough to just say, okay, retribution is this vague metaphysical thing. I would like to approach it for a short while from, again, 4 aspects. One important thing that I already mentioned is that punishment is universally accepted. As a rule, most people, almost all people, think that punishment, generally speaking, is necessary. If you ask them why, they might give this explanation or that, or they might indeed say, well, punishment is punishment. It's just there. It's necessary. And that doesn't lead anywhere, does it? It's like we accept this thing, but we don't know why. And that is where, as a philosopher, I tend to get interested. Because there are usually reasons back there behind such things that aren't obvious. So I think one thing that is actually useful about punishment is what I could call punishment as a symbol. It's a condemnation. If we see, if something bad has been done to us, and we see the community or the authorities, which in democratic societies we think of as representations of the community, if we see those authorities publicly condemn the action that hurt us, that can help us recover from that. And that's important. We are social beings, we rely on our fellow human beings, and if everyone agrees that what happened to us was bad, that can help us overcome it, and that's important. Punishment is also a ritual. It is an action that whose usefulness is not defined or limited to its direct real-world uses. It is something that needs to be done in a psychological sense. It is a matter of getting rid of the deed that has been done by punishing the one who did the deed. And that is why in many contexts we come together for punishment. You will find crowds gather in front of courthouses. You will find full courtrooms where people sometimes even cheer for the punishment that is being handed out. Or they cheer because they think that the punishment was unfair or too much or too little. And the 4th aspect of retribution is that punishment serves as a deflection. Where a punishment is seen from a retributive stance, it serves as a deflection away from the bad deed and the consequences thereof. It serves as a deflection for the perpetrator. The perpetrator who has received their quote-unquote just punishment can claim that they are done with this. And we are expected to more or less have their status restored after they've served whatever punishment that they receive. They are wiped clean. They get a new start. And they can only get that new start by going through the punishment. There is really no other way. And this, of course, is connected to religious thoughts, religious concepts like penance. But I think it's deeper. It seems to be almost culturally universal, at least in the West. So retribution doesn't really deal much with the real world consequences of bad deeds. It deals with something that has begun, I think, to come to the front, to become visible, and that is that which remains when you strip away everything but retribution from punishment, which, again, seems to be, to many people, the most important and most basic thing about punishment. What remains after you do that is that there seems to be an abstract thing called the law or justice that is out there somewhere and which can be injured by bad deeds and restored by us doing something unpleasant to the perpetrator. And if you say now, you're overinterpreting, no, I'm not. One of the most influential thinkers in matters of law is Hegel, the 18th, 19th century German philosopher, and he explicitly states this. When we punish, we restore the injury to the law writ large. So there is something out there that is the law, and the bad deed, the crime, injures that, and by the punishment it is restored. And I remember when I first read that, I was shocked. Because, come on, that is palpable nonsense. There is no thing out there called the law. There is no thing that hovers above the clouds and somehow is there and can be injured when I steal a cookie. That's crap. That is thought spinning freely on itself with no friction with reality. And culturally speaking, the law, justice, is a deity we pretend like is there, but never do so consciously. We never make it clear to ourselves we believe this thing. And that's what I'm kind of trying to do here, kind of exposing that thought in a very little way, that we do act like if we thought that there is a metaphysical law out there that we can injure or restore. So what should we do about that? Well, I'm not fully equipped to explore all aspects of that. But what I would like to do is give an opinion, just a starting opinion. To my mind, we should do away with punishment in almost all contexts. But that does not mean that I think we as a society, be it an individual community or society as a whole, should ignore bad deeds. We should not. That would be a very bad idea. There are aspects in punishment that I think we should preserve. And one thing I've already mentioned is the symbol. It is very, very important, especially to those who have had very bad things done to them, to see that the community as a whole condemns what has been done to them. The recognition that they are not alone in this, that the community is with them, and that their injuries have been accepted as something that should not have happened, is psychologically very valuable. And it can be the foundation for healing. And that's not something I would like to take even one step back from. That's incredibly important. An aspect that we should also preserve is the idea that at least for most infractions of rules, there is a way back for the offender. If I do something bad, I would like to be in a situation where there is a way back for me to acceptance. If we would be, as small communities or big countries, we would be extremely dysfunctional if everything that is a infraction of a rule would be met by total exclusion. And there has to be a way, a practice for me to return. And part of that practice of returning an offender to a accepted status in the community is restitution, which I said before is not part of punishment, but it is connected to punishment in a lot of ways. And we should focus on restitution. And I think a lot of jurisdictions do that to a degree. There are payments of damages and so forth, and those should be the focus. I would like to see our systems of punishment replaced by a system of restitution, condemnation, and aid for all those that need it. And that, first and foremost, means those that have bad things done to them. We should feel responsible for their suffering as a community because this happened in our community. And we should also offer help to those who offend. We should give them opportunities to become more productive members of society. And a last aspect that is not very comfortable to talk about, but nevertheless I think pretty important, is what I called special prevention before. Some individuals are so dangerous that some form of humane detention, separation from general society, is the only safe way for them to live. That isn't a very uncomfortable fact, but some people really have gone down so far a route of unproductive development that we cannot let them run around. That's unfortunate, but there are some, and those should be kept in a humane way out of society. And I think that is one aspect typically attached to but not identical to punishment that we should also keep. Okay, I know that this idea is very strange to most of you probably, and it's new. I think I haven't seen it very much out there, but I hope that you gain something from listening, and I think I might do something like this again in the future. Thank you for listening. Bye bye.